Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So this is session 5 of the Sutta studies for the Rains Retreat 2023. And we come to the 6th of the factors of the Eightfold Path, right effort. And this theme is, even though there isn't too much written about it, and actually the terminology Samma Vayamo is only mentioned only in the context of the Eightfold Path, but there's a very similar list of factors, 4 factors, which go under the name of the right strivings. Samma Padama, I think Padama, Samma Padana. And if you look at the definition of right effort, as it's explained in the Pali Canon, you could say that there's actually 2 parts to it. There is energy part, and then there is the right direction of the energy. You know, each time for each of the 4 right efforts, the introduction starts off, one generates wholesome enthusiasm. I think Bhikkhu Bodhi translates as zeal. One exerts effort, arouses energy, strives and determines. And then there's the 4 different right uses of energy, right directions of energy. So the right direction first, because the energy part is a bit more, it requires more explanation. But the right energy part is divided into, you can say, 2 pairs based upon the unwholesome and the wholesome. So it kind of very neatly follows after our previous theme of sila, right speech, right action, right livelihood, which is the wholesome. And it's also explained as, when you know what the wholesome and what the wholesome is, wholesome and unwholesome. Refrain from lying, see. So anyway, the right direction of energy is the 2 pairs. First of all, that the unwholesome, one prevents or resists, restrains that which is the unwholesome. That's the first one. Then one abandons, relinquishes, tries to remove the unwholesome, which has already arisen. So the prevention part, the word used is sangvara, usually defined as restraint, but is also can mean, to resist or to try to prevent it from happening, from arising, the unarisen unwholesome things, prevent it from arising. So one knows, for example, in the right speech, refrain from lying, so one becomes more mindful of one's speech then, and is careful not to exaggerate, not to swing into untruthfulness, try to keep with the truth. Then there are 2 which deal with the wholesome. It's not enough just to try to eliminate the unwholesome, but to cultivate. The 3rd one is to develop, cultivate, generate the wholesome qualities. So it's not a matter of just trying to refrain from lying, but to try and cultivate truthfulness then. And the 4th one is to try to maintain the wholesome qualities which have arisen already. So, this requires, you can say, some kind of continuity in the practice. One knows what, say, this example of refraining from lying, one knows what that is. So one tries to maintain that degree of integrity and honesty then throughout one's life. Not just while one is, following the precept or staying in a supportive environment like the monastery, but try to maintain it throughout one's life. And then it comes to energy, the generating the energy to be able to direct it in this skillful way. And if you, in the Bhikkhu Bodhi's introduction to the 5th section of the Samyutta Nikaya, I didn't mention it on the reading list, but just for your information, he analyzes what the 5th section is called the Mahavaga, the great chapter of the connected discourses. So in that connected discourses section, the Buddha goes through the various, or the Buddha explained at certain times, but it was the editors edited it in a way. They present what's called the 37 aims, supports for awakening, the Bodhipakkhiya-dhammas. And within that, there is included in that, of course, is all the various qualities or qualities the Buddha mentioned different times, different categories of qualities, like the 5 powers, the 7 factors of awakening, the Eightfold path, altogether totaling 37 different qualities. You can kind of pick and choose whatever suits your temperament, maybe. But in the Bhikkhu Bodhi's analysis, he analyzes all the references to them, to these various qualities, and energy is the most common factor through all of them. Followed closely by mindfulness, collectedness, and wisdom. But energy is the first factor. And maybe you remember when I talked about kamma, the whole principle of kamma, the Buddha mentioned, he quoted that he was a believer in kamma, in activity, kriya, and energy. That was his kind of main view of things. His perspective on the practice, cause and effect, that you can put energy into your life, and then you can actually create some causes, skillful causes, to give the right effect. So the fact of energy is very important, and in this the Buddha gave many instances where he talked about the benefits of energy. And for example, not only with the regard to the right efforts, but in other situations, other quotations, he said, "Bhikkhus, the lazy person abides in suffering, full of evil, unwholesome states, and great is the welfare which he wastes. The energetic person abides in well-being, separated from evil, unwholesome states, and great is the welfare he supplements. Therefore, bhikkhus, rouse energy for the attainment of the not yet attained, acquiring of the not yet acquired, the realization of the not yet realized." And he gives another quotation similarly. He says, "A bhikkhu has aroused energy for the giving up of unwholesome qualities and acquiring wholesome qualities, steadfast, strong in exertion, not putting down the burden of acquiring wholesome qualities." And then, of course, I can say the most extreme example maybe is when the Buddha was, just before he sat under the Bodhi tree, before his awakening, he made this sort of determination. I wouldn't definitely recommend it, but the Buddha said this anyway, so it's helpful to know. "Surely let skin, sinews, and bones remain. Let flesh and blood dry up in this body. Whatever can be attained by human strength, human energy, human exertion, I will not relax my energy until I've attained it." And he did. I don't know how many other monks have tried that and not attained it, but that's why. but you have to realize that, of course, that was situational. The Buddha had already cultivated, his past qualities, good qualities. He was already all primed for it, and he just had to really make the final determination that he's going to really have the breakthrough tonight. So, I know other monks who have tried to I wouldn't say do the similar thing, but they tried to attain something, with they had the good intention to try to attain something, but it was really be beyond their abilities. So they weren't really in tune with their level of practice, I could say. So you have to be careful how to take it in the right context. So even though the Buddha emphasized quite a bit of energy, as an important factor of the Eightfold Path, and one of the five spiritual powers, factors of awakening, etc. But there are many kinds of energy. The one which I think most people are familiar with is what I call willpower. Right? Willpower. You have this, you understand these particular value of energy, for example, and then I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna strive, to attain the unattained, etc. But unfortunately, willpower, power from the will, there's that saying, when there's a will, there's a way. But willpower is actually a part of the ego. So really what you're trying to attain with willpower is what my ego wants to attain. Not necessarily the unattained. It's not really, maybe it's not in tune with the Dhamma, for example. It's only in tune with your own ego. Okay? That's why it doesn't work sometimes. So willpower is a little bit, it does work, does have some effect, of course. Some people who have very strong willpower can, strive very diligently in certain directions, but it's really, really quite limited under the control of ego then. And, basically it is an artificial power. The ego is not the ultimate reality, so it's artificial. So eventually it's going to reach its limits, especially when it comes to spiritual practice, I would say. Because the whole purpose of spiritual practice is to get beyond the ego. Okay? So you can't use willpower to get beyond the ego, because willpower is the will, is the ego. So, right? Illogical? But there is another power, I call it life power. Just the power of living a life, a human life, for example. Willpower you can recognize because it is very tense, it's very rigid, and it's quite unstable. So people who have depended upon willpower, they can maintain it for a while, but eventually, because it's so artificial, it's not really tuned into life, as it were. But life power, it's there all the time for your whole life. You can say even in future lives if you like, but life power is not so noticeable because it's not really tense. It's natural. It's like it's in the background. For example, when you wake up in the morning. I don't know what your experience is, but wake up in the morning, and then I know, okay, actually I'm programmed to wake up at 3 o'clock. Too many years in Thailand with a bell ringing at 3 o'clock. But I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, and then sometimes I just don't feel like getting up. I wake up, and I realize, there was one of the teachers said, you should just, as soon as you hear the bell, you should just leap out of bed. I tried it a few times and passed out. It was just, my body was not in tune with that thought, you see. So now I realize, especially at my age and with my weakened heart, maybe, I don't know, my weakened system, I realize I have to, consider carefully about matching up my idea with the reality of the body, you see. So I wake up at 3 o'clock, and then I have to check out, the condition of the body first. Do I need a little bit more rest? Do I have to stretch a bit more or something, or just to get the blood flowing, And then there comes a time when life power takes over and just says, okay, that's enough sleep. Get up. But then I'm awake, and it's in tune with the body then. So I don't feel dizzy, and I don't feel disconnected, and it's a bit more harmony to waking up Not just, it's waking up, through the whole phase of waking up, becoming conscious, sitting in tune with the body, and then, there's some other aspect of tuning into the reality of the situation where you are, okay, and get up. And then I find that's much more conducive to health, and it's more in tune with meditation, because you're aware of the body and the mind. If you just jump up out of bed, just from an act of willpower, it's not in tune with the body. So it's a bit off, and I feel a little bit disconnected for a while. Like you don't have enough mindfulness, or don't have enough tranquility or something. Other qualities aren't there. So you're awake, but you're a zombie. So you can go through the motions, but you're not really present. So it's a matter of tuning into this, what I call life power, which is quite subtle. But if you notice, we notice more the willpower part. Notice yourself getting tensed up, more tense in meditation, relax a bit. And then maybe if you relax too much, like if you just let go of willpower, maybe you just fall asleep. Okay, bring a bit more energy into it, more natural energy, And many times this requires the quality of what we call khanti, or patience. Willpower wants to get something done right now. See? It's very, very forceful. It's very bit artificial. It wants to get results right now. But patience is tuning in, listening, tuning in, getting in touch with the various aspects of our being. Requires more patience. We aren't always aware of all the different aspects of our being, so it requires a bit more patience. But gradually, it kind of comes together then. Sometimes, like in Thailand, they define khanti as endurance. As more like otton, to endure, to put up with. So that I prefer more like, rather than endure it, more like having a long-term perspective, a long-term view of things. Whereas willpower wants results right now, you see. So if you see the difference between willpower and life power, then maybe you can begin to turn your attention more to the life power, away from the willpower. It's not going to be so easy, because we've already mostly depended upon willpower through our life up to now. So, and it does have some effect, sometimes, but it's very limited in the long term. So I suggest one of the helpful ways to tune into life power is what is called intentionality. Just have the intention. Yes, I'm going to get up and meditate, and not force it. Just have the noble intention there. It's like having, say, right effort. Put that energy into trying to cultivate the wholesome, rather than try to have some, too high ideal to try and fulfill. Just put it into, okay, it's wholesome thing. It's a skillful thing, beneficial thing. Do some meditation in the morning. So we put our intention into that and just try to continue with that as best we can. Even you face challenges, sleepiness, whatever, well, we try and work with that. Just rather than trying to force our way through it, or try to forbid it from arising, just try to recognize that's the situation, body, mind. What's tired? Is the body? Is it the mind? Whatever. So setting up the right intention, and then there are various ways to encourage energy, to cultivate it. In the categories of the 7 factors of awakening, for example, also in the 5 powers, but factors of awakening especially, the scriptures talk about, in the 7 factors of awakening, there are 3 energizing factors, and there are 3 calming factors. So you begin to recognize what the condition of your state of mind is and your body. You can recognize, should I cultivate the energizing ones or the calming ones? So the energizing ones are investigation of Dhamma, energy itself, and then joy. Rapture, joy. The calming ones are tranquility, collectedness, and equanimity. So the first one to generate energy is the factor of investigation of phenomena. Investigation. When one investigates, the first factor is mindfulness. So mindfulness is there. You're aware of something. You're mindful of something, and then investigation can sort of have a curiosity to try and investigate what's the nature of this, and what's the arising factor, what's the passing away factor of it. Of course, I'll explain later a bit more about this in detail next time, which is the theme of mindfulness. But investigation of Dhamma can be helpful, not just to focus on. If you focus on what you're aware of, that becomes a source of focused attention, which is collectedness, or concentration, if you like. That's a calming factor. Whereas if you investigate, try to investigate what's the nature of this phenomena we're aware of, it can be more energizing. I mean, you need a bit of energy to open your mind to it, but it can also be very interesting. Interest be generated, interest and curiosity. So that can generate more energy too. Yeah. Whereas holding on to the object, focusing on it, becomes very, very consistent, and then concentration could arise, or sleepiness could arise. So in what they call the 5 spiritual powers, is suggested, there's 5 powers: mindfulness, energy, collectedness, wisdom, and faith. So it's suggested to balance out energy and collectedness. Energy is a energy arousing factor. Collectedness is the calming one. We need to balance them, otherwise, one in the extreme, either one in the extreme will lead into its opposite. Collectedness leads to sleepiness and dullness, energy to restlessness. So a few others factors which can, like in this factors of awakening, joy can also be a factor of rousing energy. And if you enjoy something, you get some joy out of it, some rapture, some bliss even, then you want to continue. It gives you more incentive, as it were, to keep developing that quality. And then there are some special meditations the Buddha gave. They are particularly useful for generating energy, for example. Probably the most useful one is what's, and not only for energy, but I mean for developing all the spiritual qualities, is what's called developing a sense of urgency. The Pali word samvega. Samvega can, usually probably for many people, it's generated quite naturally in a way, usually by life crisis. I don't know what your life crisis was to bring you here to the monastery, but maybe there was something. Can't say it's creeping old age, can I? There's too many young people here. Maybe you just lost your job or something. I don't know. It won't get personal, but anyway. But for other people, it requires, sometimes it happens quite naturally, and if they're lucky enough, maybe, or fortunate enough, or have the right conditions, they come across the Buddhist teachings. I think this happened to myself. At university, I was kind of, getting a bit stressed out with my studies, and one of my friends who was, I don't know how he was my friend, because he was a philosopher student, not an engineering student. Maybe we were drawn to each other because we were opposites, I don't know. But anyway, but he gave me a book on Buddhism, and I just said to him, well, I haven't got time for this stuff. I got all this books to read, finish all my courses, He said, just leave it on your shelf. You might have a chance to look at it one day. And one night after my brain was really frazzled from trying to read all this physics and chemistry stuff, I looked up and there's a book on Buddhism. Oh, well, maybe that's a bit of a change of pace. So I picked it up, started reading it, and I was really amazed. To me, it was quite scientific, actually. cause and effects, when you do this and you get these results, and and especially about meditation practice, that rather than fill your brain full of all this information, it's more beneficial to have a peaceful mind. Peaceful mind, what's that? I didn't have any idea what a peaceful mind. I mean, it sounded great, but what was it? Yeah. Anyway, I couldn't follow it up, but it was a seed planted in my mind anyway. So, and then when I got really stressed out, finally I took a year out from university, ended up in a Buddhist country, Sri Lanka, and the seed germinated. A Bodhi tree sprout out of my head. No, can't go that far. I did go to Anuradhapura, though, to see the real Bodhi tree, or the sapling anyway, sapling of it. Yeah. So the grounds for, what's called the grounds for Samvega, sense of urgency, are usually reflecting on old age, sickness, and death. We're all prone to these things eventually. Maybe not at the moment. Most of us are trying to deny that, but we're getting older all the time, and we're sickness anytime can happen. Things were going so well, middle of the retreat, and somebody gets sick. It wasn't expected. It's not on the program. Nobody's died yet, anyway. better not say that. Knock on wood. They aren't that sick. But also, the Buddha also sometimes you can add a few extra ones on there. Depends upon what your cultural background is. For example, the Buddha suggested maybe for some people they may reflect upon the dangers. We're now born in the human realm. It's only human beings who can practice the Dhamma, basically. Or to say a few devas, celestial beings who are close to humans, maybe can hear the Dhamma too. But basically, if you are born in other realms of existence, no chance to practice the Dhamma. So to make use of this precious human birth at this time. See? And there are some, what's called the 5 favorable occasions for striving. One is that one is reasonably young. We can include, before 80 in that, can't we? Well, me too. Being in good health. There is abundant support available to us. The society is in harmony. No civil strife, no wars going on. And that the Sangha is in concord. Even though maybe we have our disagreements, but we're reasonably in concord, so there's no big conflict. But sometimes if there is, imagine trying to practice in some country where they have a civil war or something going on. Not so easy. Or if you don't have enough support. There were even some monks in Thailand where I was staying in North Thailand. Some of the monks from there had come from the south of Thailand. And where they were in these small villages in the south of Thailand, they didn't get enough food. So they're malnourished. So they came up to North Thailand where there was quite abundant of supplies there. So they had the right conditions there to practice. But if you were born in some little village which was quite poor, had minimal support, you wouldn't be in very good health to be able to practice properly. And of course, there is as I mentioned, the meditation which is specifically emphasized by the Buddha. One of the 40 meditation themes was mindfulness of death. Keep this in your consciousness, that any time, we can lose this opportunity to practice. Anytime death can come along. Most of us, think, oh yeah, far away, it's not going to happen today. Happen in 20, 30 years or something or whatever. But anytime you can have a brain tumor or something, brother. It's really uncertain. And then, of course, as I say, there's different kinds of energy. And one of the important parts of the Buddha's emphasis about spiritual practice is the balance, getting the right balance with these 8 different factors of the Eightfold Path. It's not a matter of, kind of perfecting every single one of them, but more a matter of kind of balancing them all out. When they all come into harmony, then the path happens. No matter, if these factors are very weak, and when they come into harmony, then your experience, your insight is weak. But you do get path and the fruit. And the stronger that those qualities are developed, and then they come into harmony, then the stronger the insight, the deeper the practice, level of practice then. It's a matter of being able to balance them all out. So there was a very significant or important teaching the Buddha gave one of the disciples, even though he was very, very diligent. I thought I had it written down here somewhere, but the story anyway. This was Venerable Sona, and he was had a lot of faith in the Buddha's teachings. He came to become a monk, even though he came from a very wealthy family, but he came with a lot of faith. He came to ordain. So he's very, very energetic, and he was really striving very hard, but didn't get any results. And the Buddha recognized his good qualities, recognized his diligence, and he was kind of losing his faith, as it were. He practiced for quite a long time diligently, but no results. So the Buddha went to him specifically and gave him this teaching, and he said to Venerable Sona, he said, before you became a monk, you were familiar with a lute. You might say a guitar, maybe. Yeah? Yes, you know how to play a guitar. Well, when you play the guitar, when you try to tune the strings, right? If it's not taut enough, is it the right note? No. If it's too taut, is it the right note? No, of course not. Right, you have to get the right tuning of this string, you see, to get the right note. So the same with energy, you have to get the right tuning of it. And if you have an excess of energy, it leads to restlessness. So your mind gets stirred up, and your body gets very tense, and no results. You don't have enough energy if the string is not taut enough, then you fall into sleepiness and dullness. Maybe you mistake, tranquility, factor of awakening, for lethargy or sleepiness. Again, no results. So you have to be you have to be able to fine tune this energy level, just the right amount, carefully balanced. Aha! Finally, he got it. He got the message. So then, when he was practicing meditation, he could fine tune his energy level. Not too taut. I would say, if there's too much willpower, then you get very, very tense. It's a sign of too much willpower, tension. Too much relaxation, of course, you just fall asleep. So anyway, he was able to balance his right energy, find the right level, right tuning of energy, and became enlightened. Lived happily ever after. So it's a good lesson to remember. So if you're struggling with the practice, with either getting headaches and finding too much tension in the body, then maybe got to back off a little bit. Try to relax a bit more. Don't give up the energy. The trouble with willpower is it's on or off usually. So I've been on retreats, and there's people who, I usually watch people in the beginning, because those who come who are the most tense looking or diligent looking, those are the first ones that are going to have problems. They're trying too hard. They're trying to attain something usually. They have a fixed idea what they want to get. They're the ones that are going to have the most problem. So usually, and then sometimes you can notice them. They're sitting very, very tense, very tight, very, very upright and very tense for a while. Then they just collapse. Then tense again, collapse, tense, collapse. Because they can't sustain it. It's so artificial. But those who come, they aren't sitting very, very straight. Maybe they aren't really upright and tense. But they're every morning, every day, they're there. Just keep going, keep going, keep going. Don't worry about them. Eventually, it'll come together. They'll be all right. But the ones who are very, very tense, after a while, they won't get the results, and then they give up. They want to leave. So I have to convince them maybe just to ease off a little bit, just stay with it, and And some people will find it out for themselves. They come with expectations and anticipations. They think, yes, I'm going to 10 days of meditation retreat. I'm going to get enlightened. I'm going to get peace of mind. I'm going to get some insight or something. And it's never the same as you expect. But just to keep an open mind. So the same with energy, practicing with energy. And we have the right direction for that energy, wholesome, unwholesome. We know already to some degree, hopefully, what the wholesome qualities are, not just the precepts, but the right aspiration, renunciation, non-ill will, non-harming, trying to observe the nature of cause and effect, the right view, and then of course those precepts, so we have the right direction for it. And then now we cultivate the right energy, the right degree of energy, the right balance of energy, and put it in the right direction. And then gradually the path becomes a bit more stable for us. We create a good foundation for the practice. So right energy is a very useful one, but you have to be able to recognize the different kinds of energy too. There's physical energy, mental energy. Sometimes the mental energy can also be not only the sense of urgency, which most of the time is put in a sense of danger, for example. Death is creeping up to us, old age is creeping up to us. But you can also put in a sense of inspiration. For example, that there were people who, especially in the Buddhist time, even today, different ajahns, different teachers, they in contemporary age here, who did practice, and they did put the teachings into practice and could realize it now. Not only, 2,500 years ago in the Buddhist time, but in the present time too. There are people who can, even though some people even have gone through more difficulties than we have. Growing up in, say, northeast Thailand, for example, in a poor area, people had a lot of faith, but what those early Tudong monks had to face, the privations, going without proper food for days and days at a time, and facing malaria and tigers in the forests, to find some solitude. We have it pretty easy, actually, but sometimes those situations, like having to face privations or difficulties or challenges, could also rouse quite a bit of energy to rise above them. You have to generate the energy to rise above them. There's one story of Ajahn Chah when he was a young monk in the forest meditating, and he got very sick. I don't know what it was from. There's all kinds of, there's fevers in the forest, and maybe it's bad water or something. But anyway, he was completely laid out on his back, laid down in the forest, had no energy to get up even. And he's lying there, and then he heard this deer nearby, a barking deer, made a noise that it ran away. And he just reflected upon himself. He said, "Oh, the deer don't have any hospital, If they get sick, they have to heal themselves. Here I am lying on the, expecting somebody to come and look after me, my mother, or call a doctor to come and save me. But he says, it's not going to happen." So here I am in the forest. I've got to rely upon myself, So with that kind of determination, have to rely upon yourself. He got up, and then tried to heal himself, got better. And then some of the other teachers, they've used meditation like samadhi practice to heal himself. So the powers of the Dhamma, you don't need, physical medicines, but the power of the Dhamma, the commitment to the practice, the commitment to the determination to practice, to develop the meditation practice, maybe concentration to some degree, and then maybe that will be a medicine that will help us to continue with the practice. So right energy, slowly coming together. That's the sixth quality. We got 2 more to go for the next series of talks.
Anmayam Dhammavargata Sadhu Karang Dharamase Sadhu, 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 and welcome.
Any questions?
Investigation of Dhamma. It's involved thinking, or doesn't matter either way. It's just be kind of observation of feeling or emotion, or is it kind of some also some thinking or reflecting?
Well, it's called contemplation or reflecting on Dhamma, yeah. Investigation of Dhamma. Yeah. So it's not just thinking. Yeah. Investigation is a bit more wider than just thinking about it. But sometimes you might need to use thinking to point you in the right direction, like asking, what's the cause of this? Yeah. What's the bigger picture here or something? Then allow the experience to speak to you then. Yeah. But if you're just staying with, you're saying, where does this come from? Oh, maybe it comes from this, maybe it comes from that. Oh, it could be this, could be that. Fill in all the blanks with your own thinking. That's not investigation. It's overthinking.
Would you like to give an example of how you apply it?
like about we're going into about mindfulness, but I mean the general direction of mindfulness is first of all to be aware of whatever is the theme. You see, being aware of the breathing, for example, and then try to be aware of the rising factors of breathing and the cessation factors of breathing. So you have to have that in your mind to know how to direct your awareness. Yeah? But trying to observe or investigate the arising factors to allow it to manifest from the experience, from mindfulness, deeper mindfulness then.
So would you not need some prior teaching of how the Buddha explained it?
Yes.
To be able to investigate?
Yes.
So that how does someone who's new get that teaching?
Well, it depends on if they're really interested in the theme, they can always research what the Buddha said about it, or they can ask a teacher, get the information. Some teachers don't even know that that whole explanation of what the Buddha was teaching. Actually, they don't know Buddhist mindfulness. They just be aware, just be aware of it and let it go, or something, and don't bring in the investigation part of it. I just read a story a little while ago about somebody who had some psychology problems, and then their therapist suggested they do mindfulness practice. But all it was being aware of their state of mind. And it could, yes, yeah. And I thought, if they had just asked them, try to be aware of where it comes from, so they can see the cause and the effect. And if you see the cause and effect process, you realize that what you're aware of is not a thing in itself. Yeah. But if you don't have that, you look at your issue, your fear of groups, of other people, for example, then it seems to be a really big obstacle in itself, rather than realizing it comes from somewhere else. It's just a cause and it's just an effect of a previous cause, you see. So it has very little, doesn't have so much substance anymore then, as a thing in itself. Of course, that's what you're aware of, that aspect of it. But if you investigate the cause and cessation, causality, then you see it as part of a bigger process. And it ceases to be so tangible, so solid then, I would say. But this psychotherapist didn't know that, you see. They didn't know the Buddhist explanation of it. They just had be mindful. It's as good as it goes, but it's, unfortunately, you see, missed maybe a very good opportunity to get a deeper insight into it.
That's what I'm asking for. Okay, say there are some people living here, and where do they get that information?
They come next week to talking mindfulness. If they're still here.
That's good. That's good. That investigation process, if you can explain
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
how that causality can be investigated. That will be really helpful for everyone.
Yep.
So the,
So stay tuned next week.
yeah.